Hello, this video is the history of Russia. No. Let's make this video the history of India. Because India is a country that I didn't really touch up on too much when I did my recorded history videos. So, India has a very interesting history. Probably the most interesting history. Because it goes back the longest and with the most detail. We can go back into barbarian times with detail with India. And it wasn't barbarian times in India. The Mahabharata is the ancient Bible of India. Most people in America haven't heard of the Mahabharata, which is fucked. Because it's way bigger than the Bible, than the Christian and Jewish Bible. And it is way older as well. So I actually listened to the entirety of the Mahabharata myself. And the entirety of the Mahabharata is on my website in written form and in audio form. You can download the entire thing from my website. And it's 237 hours of solid talking. Just a second here, my computer just suddenly woke up. Yeah, I know. Let me just freaking pause it. Thank you. Okay, 237 hours straight, dude. Of talking. Now, when I listened to it, I didn't really remember much at all. But according to the Mahabharata, I don't think I've done a video about the Mahabharata. So I'll include that in my History of India video because it is the history of India, of ancient India. I don't really remember much of the Mahabharata, what happened in the story, because I did it with Natural Reader, and I kept trying to transfer the voices with Kate, which is the good voice, but they're idiots at Natural Reader, and they make it so that it snaps back to Anne every time. And they even make it so it snaps back to like Paul, the guy. And Anne is a bad voice. Kate's the only a good voice, but you set it on to Kate, and then they have it programmed so it snaps back to Anne. It's fucking annoying as hell. So I had to listen to the entire Mahabharata on Anne. So it was hard to concentrate on. But basically, Mahabharata is I was under the impression that a lot of the little tales and stories about stuff were told over and over again, just to kind of try to make it. Like whoever put the Mahabharata together were like purposefully trying to make it the longest book ever, and so they were kind of retelling stories over and over again. You know, like they'd have the story when it actually happened, and then they would have like the guy who it happened to, like when he met other guys, he'd retell the story again to them. You know, and then the guy who heard it would like retell the story all over again to the new guys, and they'd retell the story. That's because I kept feeling like I'd heard the same story over and over again. But anyways, it's basically the story of it's kind of like a Quentin Tarantino movie, the way that because it has a lot of flashbacks. Like it'll be the actual story of the war it's a war between, I think, the Kshatriyas, which were an ancient Indian tribe back a long time ago, and people don't really know exactly how long ago it was. Like, you have lots of different dates. You've got like 3 different dates for the time of Moses and stuff. You know, if you go on Wikipedia, it's like, are you going to believe the Jews? You're going to believe the modern historians? You're going to believe like the Christians or whatever? So it's kind of like that with the Mahabharata. But most people think the Kshatriyas and, the events of the Mahabharata, mainstream scholars think that it happened about, 1500 BC or something like that. 1300 BC was the Aryan invasion, the Aryan migration into India, and they brought Hinduism with them, all the Hindu gods and all that kind of stuff. And they came from like the northeast, so I guess like the Caucasus Mountains or something. And Zoroaster was from that area. He was from about like modern day like Turkmenistan or something. And he was around that time as well. So it probably has something to do with that. But when it was Zoroaster, that's the religion of the Iranians, but the Persians. But some people think that the Mahabharata, and I'm actually one of these people, is the tale of the war that happened, the end of Atlantis, that happened 11,000 BC. The reason I believe that is because the Greeks had the same story, and they said it was 11,000 BC, or 11,400 BC, if you want to be exact, because Plato said it was 9,000 years before him. If you read the Timaeus and the Critias, which is also on my website, and you might be able to download the audio on it. I had to take all the audio off my website because they suspended my account at iPower because I uploaded too much, even though they said I had unlimited gigas, and they changed their mind and said it was only 20 gigabytes. But the Greeks have the same tale of this big war that happened between Atlantis, which was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, behind the Straits of Gibraltar, and Athens. And Athens was besieged, but Athens won the war. And then Atlantis sunk. And he heard it from his grandfather, and he heard it from his grandfather, whose also name was Critias or Timaeus or whatever, who lived in Egypt. So, and that was like an ancient story from Egypt. So, it's the same kind of story, and the stuff that they say in the Mahabharata, and I have links actually. If you click on the links, alien links on ancient texts on my website, it'll take you directly to that place on the Mahabharata, within context of the Mahabharata, so you can like read before and after it as well. And they even have one of a nuclear bomb exploding. But Eric von Daniken said it was in like chapter 5, section 6 or whatever, and one of the time he was talking, and I looked there and it wasn't there. But I actually heard it myself, where they were talking about like, and then the big blast came and it melted the skin off the elephants, and the water was boiling, and I mean, there was a huge plume of smoke cloud and everything. But I wrote it, and then I like forgot because I was in the gym listening when I heard it, and then I wrote it down, and I lost a piece of paper, so I don't know where that was. But yeah, and it was only mentioned once, but it was very clearly a nuclear bomb. And they also referred to Vimanas. Well, actually, somebody else calls them. Well, they're called different names, Vimanas and stuff, flying vessels, planes that fly. And there's one where they had battles with each other. The gods flying on their chariots, flying around, battling each other. And they blew one up, then that came crashing to the sky, from the sky, and blew up and crashed to the ground and blew everything up. But it was all these wars with each other. The Kshatriyas versus the Brahmins. And the Brahmins were like in between gods and Kshatriyas, which is really similar to the ancient, like the Anunnaki, like the ancient Hindu, Iranian or Persian or Mesopotamian, Iraqi gods. They're like half human, half god, and then you have the giants from the Philistines from the Old Testament. And yeah, but that's what the Brahmins were. They were like half god, half human. And then the Kshatriyas were like the humans, and so there is this huge caste system, and that caste system comes from the Mahabharata, which is, mentions it over and over again. And so I think originally the caste system comes from just, you have the gods and then the half gods and the humans, and it was like really distinctly related. And they mentioned that a lot, like the highest Kshatriya is lower than the lowest Brahman, and the highest Brahman is lower than the lowest god, although, just stuff like that. But it would, the way it would, like, when I say it was like related to a Quentin Tarantino movie, is it was kind of like a lot of flashbacks. Like, you'd have the tale of the war and the battles and the stuff that actually happened. And then you would have the wise man would meet with like the prince, and then he would tell him all of the lessons about how to be. Because it seemed like half of the book was the tale of like a battle, just wars after wars after wars. And then the other half of the book was like the wise man giving spiritual lessons to like a king. And they had it very, very, very intricate, and lots of different rules and stuff. And some of the things that they really focused on was how like people who are like respectable are not given to vice. Like they don't get addicted to alcohol and drink and go crazy. And most importantly, they don't get addicted to gambling. Apparently gambling was really like a really big vice for the Indians back then. And there was this one king who gambled away his entire fortune. Like he kept losing and he kept thinking he was going to win and he kept losing. And first he lost like this bit and then he lost that bit and then he lost his kids. He ended up losing his entire fortune, his entire kingdom. He had to give his kingdom to the dude who lost it to. And but I think he was only going to give it to him for like 20 years or something. So he had to live in the woods and then he'd come back and he'd get his kingdom back or something like that. And that may be the story when he was in the woods and he shot somebody who thought he was a deer, but then it turned out that it was a Brahmin or it was like a god. And he was really pissed off at him. He's like, "What are you doing shooting me? I'm a Brahmin or something. I'm a god. You don't shoot. And you don't shoot without knowing what you're shooting at." And he turned it into some like big like philosophical lesson. But yeah, they had names of like just piles and piles and piles of different Indian tribes and kingdoms. The Pandavas, the Kshatras, and yeah, lots of. I wish I could remember more of the details of the spiritual lessons, but it was kind of like. Also, I think maybe even prescribing laws. It was kind of like the first law book. It included everything. I mean, they had kind of like, the Code of Hammurabi with the really detailed laws of trading laws and all that kind of stuff. It was like that. But also tales of the beginnings of the people, like in the Old Testament of the Israelis, and also, and more than anybody else in the whole world is like really, really detailed, like philosophical, religious teachings. Mainly having to do with being self-control and not easily excitable and a lot of like advanced teachings too. Like stuff that we would follow now. Like if somebody is starving, you feed them. If somebody is weak and they have no protection, you protect them, and stuff like that. Anyways, but yeah, they had tales of the gods having battles with the humans and the gods having battles with the gods and flying saucers, and like they described a big like missile that could shoot and then blow up in lots of other missiles and kill everything in sight. And but whenever had battles, people were shooting arrows, bows and arrows. But they said like there were so many bows and arrows that it blotted out the sun, and and it was like as many elephants as the eye can see. So, even if you don't want to believe that there was like, well, basically what I believe is back then, yeah, it was like all these like kingdoms that aliens from outer space came and hooked up with or created, kind of like in Mesopotamia. And they each had their own town that they were boss of, and so that the people would like pray to their god. They called them the gods, and they would. But then, like, I guess they got the aliens got kind of like had problems with each other, or maybe just out of just pure cynicism, they just had battles with each other with at the humans' expense. I don't know, but there were definitely lots of battles going on there, and oh, it's raining. Huh. But yeah. Anyway, let's see, 241. That's good to know. Yeah, but that was a long time ago. But it's interesting to look at. Okay, so then about 1300 BC is when the Aryans entered into India, and from the northwest, and they brought Hinduism, and that's supposedly when the Mahabharata was written, or at least the Upanishads, like the Bible, the rule book Bible, and actually the Bhagavad Gita is the most famous section of the Mahabharata, and that's like chapters 8 through 13 of the Mahabharata. But the Aryans came in, and that's when Krishna came. Krishna was supposed to live during there, But Krishna is portrayed as a blue-skinned, like a god, a blue-skinned person. And the Indians nowadays, they view Krishna as like a god, like literally. Like he can fly around the universe, But he's an actual person. Kind of like maybe the Christian idea of God. Like, I don't even know if Christians have that idea of God, but they refer to him as a he, so. He. Well, at least Michelangelo painted God as like the white caped and stuff, old man with a big beard. So that's kind of what the Indian idea of it is. And so that went on for a long time. With all these different kingdoms, and they have really good history of them because if you look at Wikipedia, there's like tons of kingdoms all over. They go way back, and then let's see. Fast forward some, because my history of India isn't so good right now. Let's go up to Alexander the Great, because he made a big impact on India. Alexander the Great died in 323 BC, and he died at 32. So he was born in like 340. He was like born in like what 354 or something like that BC. And he was the son of. Well, I guess this will be in the history of Greece section. But the Greeks had been wanting to invade Persia for 100 years, because 100 years before that, the Persians tried to invade Greece 3 times, but they failed. And Alexander's father wanted to do it, and then he died, and then some say assassinated by the king of Persia because he knew he was going to try and get invaded by them. But then Alexander went, conquered Greece, and brought all the Greeks over, and the Greeks wanted to do that. They took over Persia. And then they brought this huge army for, I think it was 8 years or something, hiking all through the mountains across Iran. Oh my God, it's a hummingbird, dude. He ran off already. That was crazy. The thing was tiny. Flew, because I'm here at Mount Shasta. I'm at Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta. Okay, they went into India, and they went about as far, they went past the Indus Valley in Pakistan. They went into like modern day, like Kashmir-ish area. So the northwestern part of India. And then Alexander went back to Babylon and died of wounds he suffered from getting shot by an arrow in a siege of a town. And he left, his kingdom was broken up into 4 different kingdoms, and one of them was the Greco-Bactrians, the Bactrian kingdom, which is around modern day Kashmir area, like northwestern part of India. And so they brought a lot of the Greek culture there, like the Greek gods. They left statues of Greek gods, and probably even the Greek togas, and also Greek blood, white man blood. And it kind of made a connection between India and Europe for the first time. And then, I actually didn't look at my lineage of history before I did this video, but then about oh my God, I don't really know much about history about India after that. They had all these different kingdoms. I'm drawing a blank. Oh shit. And then, oh my God, is that all I know about India? Guess I'll have to fast forward a lot. India was just a country down there for a really long time. And then about 500 BC, I guess this is before Alexander the Great, but about 500 BC, in modern-day southern Nepal, that's when the Buddha lived. And he was this Nepalese prince. And he had a wife and a couple of kids. And he was going to, I guess they kept him inside the palace his whole life, and then he went outside and he saw there was poor people, and he felt bad for them. Um, and he decided that he wanted to figure out a way to alleviate their suffering, or figure out a way to like fix them. And he figured maybe the best way to do that was to just leave the palace and go live in the woods with all of the sadhus. So I guess his wife like just was solo after that, and his brother became king or something. I don't know, but I don't know how old he was, but he was still pretty young. And I think it took him like 4 years or something. And then he was sitting under a Bodhi tree, and I guess they don't know even which one it was. It was in India, modern day India, like Bodh Gaya. Oh wait, that's Nepal. Like I can't remember, but and he became enlightened, and he could see all of his past lives, and he figured out the way to become enlightened was just to meditate. Because life is suffering, but if you meditate, you can bring up the sankharas by being still, all of your past negative karma, all of your past negative units of bad memories, and then you face them and look at them, and then they go away because they went there the first time because you didn't face up to them when they first happened. So then you packed them away and have to face up to them later. So, that's what he did. And then he walked around until he was 80, teaching, and became a big teacher. But a lot of the Hindus, the Hindu priests, I guess Hinduism had a big caste system back then. So they kept track of who the Brahmins were, and the Aryans were, I guess. And it is a color thing. Like the darker skin you are, the lower caste you are, and the lighter skin you are, the higher caste you are. And there's some Indians, like in southern India, who are pretty much like black skinned, and so they look a lot different from like the Bollywood stars you see running around. But a lot of those people didn't like him because they were like saw him as threatening their religion, their established Hindu religion. Just like how the Pharisees and Sadducees didn't like what Jesus was doing. So they would try and do all these like little like scams to try to get him busted. One lady like walked in one of his sermons and said, I'm pregnant with your baby, and you just left me after getting me pregnant with your baby, just like you left your wife. And he's like, what, my darling? Why are you lying? What? I'm not lying. Oh, why are you lying? And she got nervous, and I guess the little like thing she tied to her belly fell on the floor, and then she was like, sorry, and ran off. So there's a few stories like that. But anyway, he died when he was 80, and then everybody followed him, wanted to be Buddhist. So Buddhism was a big religion in India. It was the big Indian religion. Because I guess he moved into India after he became enlightened. So he... But then, and also the Buddha's doctor was this guy called Jivaka Kumar Baka. And he was the guy who invented Thai massage. Thai massage is something that I studied when I was in Nepal. And it is like where you... it's 3 parts. You push on the lymphatic system. You push the arms from the extremities into the inner to push the lymph back in, and get the blood circulating as well. And then you push on the energy lines right on the muscles. And there's ones over the muscles, each muscle, from out into in. And then you give them certain stretches, really good like yoga stretches. And so that was pretty cool. And so the first beginning of Buddhism in the Buddhist temples that they set up, all the Buddhists, they would do Thai massage on each other and meditate with each other and do all the other Buddhist stuff along with the Thai massage. It was like part of the same religion. But then as the years went on, Thai massage went out of India into Thailand, and that's why it's called Thai massage. And Buddhism did too. But Buddhism mainly also went into Tibet and became the main religion in Tibet and didn't bring Thai massage with it. And that was because there was this guy called Padmasambhava back in the year 800. But I guess that would be the story of China, the history of China, because Tibet's in China. So, Uh, okay, so then yeah, there was Alexander the Great, which was only like 150 years after the Buddha. So there's lots of different like people coming into India, and then Indians absorb that and then kind of make their own religion. So there's probably tons of ancient religions in India, and I think they said they have like 30 million gods in India because somebody brings a god, and instead of like them stopping believing in that god, they would just believe in the new god as well, and they believe in all the gods, and some people would believe in some gods more, and I think it's really cool like that. I think that's kind of a prototype of what the future is going to be like. It's going to be like how India is, just people, just 1,000,001 different beliefs, and they all kind of mesh together in one big belief. So they all agree on, the important stuff, the big stuff. Basically believe everything that all the religions believe. So yeah, 1300 BC, the Aryans come. 800 BC, I think that is, Zoroaster lives. Oh, shit, I'm not totally sure when it was Zoroaster. I think 1300 the Aryans come, and Hinduism is invented, according to modern day historians. 1100 Zoroaster, 800 is when Homer was, and then 500 the Buddha, and then 320 Alexander the Great, 330. And then, they had Ashoka the Great. He was a big, important leader in India, and I think he lived around the time of Jesus. And he was, like, the first, like, Buddhist king. And he was, like, really, like, peaceful guy, I think he was. And he was really helped the poor and stuff like that. And I think they were a lot more peaceful. Indians are a lot more peaceful than Europeans. Like, their leaders are great for not for conquering, but for developing kind of culture in a peaceful way. And if you look at what the culture of India versus like the culture of, say, England from, say, the time of when the English came and took over India, or say like 500 years ago, India had a lot more developed cuisine, lots and more different kinds of food. Their clothing was a lot more elaborate. I think, England had a lot of really elaborate clothing too, if you watch that miniseries, The Tudors. But I'm of the idea that poor people would dress more elaborately, more colors in their robes, and then they'd have more jewelry and more piercings and more makeup, and just generally the wealth flowed throughout society more than just the super rich being dressed crazy wealthy, and then everybody else kind of dressed in rags. But okay, so let's fast forward India. I can't name any kingdoms, but by the time the English went there, that was in like 15s or something, 1700s, late 17. I don't even remember, man. I'm not really that good at Indian history, but there was this kingdom called the Mauryan Kingdom, and it took up pretty much half of southern India. So it was kind of like India is a big place, but it was kind of like it was one country, just two back then. Took up a lot of space, but they had battles with the English, and the English beat them with their cannons and their war technology. So they were subsumed into the English Empire back for a long time, a couple of kings before Victoria. And then Victoria was declared Empress of India. She was the only English monarch declared Emperor of India. And I think she even went there. She went around the world. Yeah, I think she went there. And then, and this is during the Industrial Revolution. She was the first monarch to take a train ride, and she freaked out because it was going 20 miles an hour, and she thought that was way too fast, she and her husband. Yeah. But then Indians kind of didn't like being inferior to the English, to the British. And a lot of the British who went there kind of felt like India was superior. India was very very, very rich culture, and so people would go there and just want to stay there. The English. And I think that kind of brought more white blood into India. Now, as far as the Mongols, because the Mongols took over like the whole world back in the 1200s. I mean, they invaded everywhere. Southeast Asia, Northeast Europe, Japan, Middle East, everywhere. They didn't go into Africa, but... so India, I don't know if they went into India. They made it into India. I don't really remember anything about that. But anyways, I was kind of going back some. So let's go back to England and India. France also had some stake in India. So France and England had some battles with each other there in India. The Dutch had Indonesia. And then the Indians finally got their independence before World War II with Gandhi back in like the 20s or something. The Indians fought for the English. They called it the Raj. The English kingdom was the English Raj. They fought for the English Raj in World War I. But I think they got their independence between World War I and World War II with the help of Gandhi when they did the non-violent demonstrations. They would all just refuse to work and just sit down and do their popular protests just by sitting down. And then when they come up to beat them, they just let them beat them. And different method than what the white people used, but it worked because there's so many Indians, you know. It worked, and then they got their country, and now they're still growing in population a lot, and gonna get a population crunch. But they seem to be smart people. They're good at math. The ones who come to America, they do the tech support over there for Americans, and they're okay. They're not nearly as good as the Americans, but at least they can speak English. They can understand you, and you can understand them, and they try, and they're friendly and stuff. But I've never actually been there myself. I got the 6-month. Visa, but I didn't go. So I have yet to have to go to India. But it's cheap, so I should be able to afford to check it out. I'd love to check out India. Anyways, that's my video, the history of India. Not that much knowledge, but it's because there's a lot of stuff to know. I mean, there's so many kingdoms and stuff there. And it's raining like a motherfucker. Alright, ciao ciao.